Azerbaijani society. So Ulvi will give an overview of several cultural aspects. Ulvi, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for the kind invitation, and to the president of the club and the club members. And also thank you to Ulvia for the, such a warm introduction. And for Reese, I think, I hope you succeeded to, make falling in love with our economy. I learned something new myself about my own country. So that's probably my turn now to make you fall in love with the culture. So I think generally one overview of the country, of Azerbaijan is that it sits between Asia and Europe, and having fit in both Eastern and European cultures, influenced by global powers around that has been mentioned already, like Turkey, Russia, and Iran. And you kind of get instantly equipped with a set of stereotypes, I would say, of the Orientalist type. Sometimes stereotypes help, but sometimes they project distorted images, as we all know. And I think when it comes to cultural review of Azerbaijan, there is one missing part, a feature, I would say, that I think is not very well articulated by us to the Western audiences. And I think the missing part is that Azerbaijani culture is a unique phenomenon. Yes, I sound very ambitious, in the sense of the merge of these two civilizations. And I'd like to underline that it's not our brotherly state of Turkey, for example, or Iran, that represent this ideal marriage or the two civilizations. I'm talking about cultural sense now. And no doubt, both Persian and Ottoman cultures are giants in their own merit, but Azerbaijan actually has managed to generate the best pearls of this fusion of these two civilizations, Eastern and European. And when we're forced to adjust, depending on a historical period of time, but especially I would refer to the Russian expansion beginning from the 19th century onwards, Azerbaijan kept reinventing itself and in fact boosted its creative potential again in a cultural context. So I hope that I'll be able to convince you towards the end of my talk that I might be right in my ambition statement. And I'll just now share my screen as well. So I'm not going to have a PowerPoint presentation as Fariz, and it's not as fancy graphs and so on, but that will be pictures. I don't see a share screen function option, team.
I'm just checking now.
Oh yes.
You are a co-host. You should have it.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. So just before everything, I'd like to. Generally, we start the introduction with our symbol, like sort of architectural symbol, which is made in tile. It will come up in a minute. But then I thought I want you to see, first of all, it's just my shot from my phone. I'm sorry if it's not a perfect resolution, but it's so far what I could get. But I think this picture, I really like it because it represents what I think about my own country. And what would you see, this merge. So on the left-hand side, you would see the leftovers of the medieval architectures, which is, well, right now a restaurant. I'm not too sure it's a function right now, but it's a splendid restaurant in a medieval setting, brick work. On the right, you would see 19th century building in a European style, but you can see also the balconies, and the balconies that are called Bakunian balconies. They're inseparable part of Bakunian architectural landscape. And then in the perspective, we see one of the flame towers, sort of our urbanistic piece of architecture. Flame towers, they symbolize the flame. Well, it's the symbol of the country. So that gives you already the feeling. So just wanted you to instantly have a feel of what it is. That's another one, another setting. Also, it's part of the old city. So you would see a 12th century minaret on the left-hand side, and then you would see the other part of the city, and again with the flame towers at the background, and some sort of art installation as well. Then that's the most iconic one with the Maiden Tower. It's called, so it's the oldest structure in Baku's old city, and well, no one really knows when it was built, but it was completed in the 12th century, along with most of the medieval walled city. Well, it's possible, Ulvia mentioned about Zoroastrianism, so it was really, indeed a very common religion before, we converted into Islam. And it used to be also as astronomical observatory, and lots of legends around it about the most famous one was the king's daughter, the Shah's daughter, who took her own life by jumping off the top of the tower to escape a marriage. An arranged marriage, let's say, or a marriage of strategic inconvenience, in other words. And around these legends, we have lots of poems, plays, fairy tales, ballads, and so on. But there are also other legends about it. And I'd like to talk about the music. Well, just look at these lovely chaps here. Well, the music is, I would say, the most emblematic of the national identity and the guardian of Azerbaijani culture. And it generally goes along with poetry. So Azerbaijani music has been developing along with literature and poetry since ancient times. And there are two very unique musical forms called ashik and mugam. And both, in a sense, they constitute the major part of oral musical heritage of Azerbaijani culture. And it's not just in a kind of musical accompaniment and entertainment. So it's a form of it's a unique way in which the Azerbaijani people commune with the divine. So it's very much a spiritual experience, almost like meditation in some sense. So it combines poetry, storytelling, dance, vocal and string instrumental music, creating a traditional performance art. Ashik poetry and music can be found in the 7th century, and it was all based around epic stories. The most famous one, it was called Dede Korkut, and it was famous not only in Azerbaijan and the whole Turkic world, but it is in Azerbaijan that it's been I would say refined and polished off all the time because of the music that we developed over the centuries. And from the 16th century, Azerbaijani ashiks, they were the bearers and guardians of the national language, national identity. So they performed also at weddings, folk festivals, and so on. The classical repertoire includes about 200 songs, 2,000 poems, and numerous stories. They're called dastans. Dastan means story in the Turkic language. And just worth pointing out, I guess, that the music was not like there is no distinction between high and low music. So it was more to delight to the not only to the ears of the Lord, but also to the ordinary people. The pearl of the Azerbaijani musical form is mugam, and this is, by the way, the trio is mugam. It is highly complex art and combines classical poetry and musical improvisation on string instruments sung in a particular style that is often compared to yodeling. And Mugam is never composed by a single individual, but rather created by folk, always anonymous. And this is the classical trio ensemble that consists of the singer on the left-hand side here, and then in the middle is tar. If you can see the instrument, it's called tar, long-necked lute, and kamancha, that's on the right. Players and singers performing Mugam recite ghazals, if you know, also probably heard in Persian literature as well. So Azerbaijan is inscribed in the history of world literature with poets like Tabrizi and Nizami Ganjavi. Perhaps some of you know Nizami Ganjavi as a Persian poet, but actually he was Azerbaijani by origin, and he was born and he died in the city of Ganja, which is a city in Azerbaijan. And in fact, he was not writing only in Persian. Towards the end of his life, he also wrote in Turkic language. But you know, also we had other giants like Fizuli in the 16th century, Nasimi, Hagani, who produced between the 12th and 16th centuries, and they produced the most important, I would say, Persian Turkish language writings. So that's another one. Sorry, so no, it's not. Oh, self-breathing. Yeah, just a second. Right. So that's another ensemble of Mugam. That's you know, just to show you the instruments and the other founding fathers. That's already modern times, how generally it's performed, and national costumes. So pretty much these days you can find this in concert hall, and it's very important to underline that it's a living tradition. So it's not like something that spared only on particular days or festivals and so on. So it's pretty much every day on television, and even if you go to rural areas, you would see people singing and playing. That's their set of their main instruments in Azerbaijan. That's a modern intake, I would say, of Mugam. Not all traditional, let's say, Mugam players agree that it's probably the best part, but I personally think it's beautiful. By the way, this particular ensemble, his name is Nalim Kasimov, he performed in London as well, in Barbican, in South Bank, while he's internationally recognized musician, and he performs worldwide. That's actually an American Mugam player. I thought, just perhaps to give you an idea how Mugam is appreciated in the world. And that's his Jeffrey Valberg. I forgot his surname, sorry. My compatriots maybe will help me with that. Actually, he's quite good. I saw him in London one time. I think it was a couple of years ago, certainly before these COVID times. And he's the one who propagates this Mugam culture in American University. And just to show you how we cherish, again, Mugam, is that this is the center, International Mugam Center in Baku. That's the modern building in the shape of tar. And this is how it looks in the evening. And just to tell you as well that the town of Shusha is particularly renowned for this art, and for a good reason, because Shusha of Karabakh is home to this unique tradition. And Karabakh and Shusha particularly gave Azerbaijan much more musical talents than any other region in the country. And it was in Shusha where, in the 18th and 19th century, that the school of Mugam was formed, with several branches, and then it became so famous, and not only in the South Caucasus, but throughout the Middle East. And again, Mugam developed on the poetry, and again, it was in Shusha where the poet of 18th century Molla Panafagif, whose poetry had a huge impact on the development of the Azerbaijani literature and music. And just to sum up on the Shusha, just to give you an idea of what it means to us, Azerbaijanis as a town, as I say to my Russian-speaking friends, it's like St. Petersburg of Russia. So Shusha is what defines pretty much the Azerbaijani cultural DNA, and it carries the spiritual, the cultural, historical value to all Azerbaijanis, and regardless of which region they come from. So it's sort of our creative hub, I would say. It's home to our best musicians, composers, singers, writers, poets, artists, and it's a truly holy place in terms of musical heritage, and many historians and travelers call it as a conservatory of Caucasus or music academy of the Orient. And one poet, Russian poet, Sergei Yesenin, said that, well, if you can't sing, it means that you're not from Shusha. That's in a way to show you how Shusha was appreciated not only by Azerbaijanis but elsewhere. Well, like Ulvia and Faris mentioned, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, so Shusha was under the Armenian occupation for 3 decades. Since 1992 as a result of the First War, and it was last November it was liberated, and probably was the day that every person in Azerbaijan, with no exception, shed their tears, even those who keep the emotions inside. Is just that the importance is huge of this place to us. And Shusha has been recently officially announced a cultural capital of Azerbaijan, so I'm personally very, very, very pleased about that. So now I want to come into this twist, the European flair, infused with Azerbaijani traditional folk culture, to that my statement at the beginning that the marriage of East and West. So you're looking now at the founder of Azerbaijani classical music, and again, Shusha is here because he was from there. And Shusha was the birthplace of the first opera in the Muslim world, in the Muslim East, in the Muslim world. And yes, we consider him as a godfather of the Azerbaijani classical music, and he revolutionized the classical opera of the European tradition by synthesizing it with the Azerbaijani mugam, and then creating his own genre, the Eastern opera. Well, it had a tremendous success and took Caucasus, Russia, Europe, and beyond by storm. And it was his first opera called Leyli and Mejnun. Perhaps you've heard about a classical story of Leyla and Mejnun, sort of a Romeo Juliet, but the Middle Eastern version. The lyrics were based on a poem of Fizuli, Azerbaijani poet, and it was staged in 1908. And that's another portrait. I'm sorry, it looks very small. So that's the poster of the opera, the first opera, Leyli and Mejnun, in 1988. That's the miniature from Leyli and Mejnun, and that's actually, I managed even to find a picture from the stage in 1908. I did some digging, but I managed to find it. So it's 1908, the first launch of the opera. And that's the poster in Russian. It says that, in 12 January 1908, Leyli and Mejnun and Baku, and all the other information. That's just, I like the painting. That's Üzeyir Hacıbeyli, as I said, our godfather of the classical music, and in accompaniment of his friends and his family, his wife. Apart from him, we have a big school, musical school, in Azerbaijan. So there are lots of names. I just don't want probably to overload you too much with names, because I'm sure you will never remember them. But still, there are two big names like Karagarayev and Fikret Amirov that maybe you would hear them as well on Classic FM here, because I do. And both now in the past, I'm sorry, Karagarayev, he wrote nearly 110 pieces, including ballet, operas, symphonic chamber pieces, and the most important one, I think it was the ballet Seven Beauties in 1952. And this ballet opened a new stage in the history and the development of ballet in Azerbaijan. And it's also founded a new type of musical dramaturgy in the ballet art of Azerbaijan. I think we're going to have a surprise from Sabina later on. There is also another type of musical genre in Azerbaijan, which is quite good fun. It's called Meyhana. It's sort of folk rap, national rap, when the masters, they may write, memorize, or improvise their lyrics and perform their works as like a cappella or to a beat. So this genre was actually banned in the Soviet times, well, because they probably see some sort of a freedom of speech in the tradition, because you improvise and you never know what you're going to say. But since the collapse of the Soviet Union, it's been flourishing again, and it's a very, very popular genre, especially amongst youngsters, given this sort of echoes with the rap culture. But talking about the Soviet period, if there is one good thing about the Soviet system, I don't know what my compatriots would think, but it helped popularize a systematic classical musical education. So people from all social backgrounds could participate and perform in music of different style. But undoubtedly, the musical school in Azerbaijan is very reputable, be it a traditional folk or European classic or Azerbaijani classic. And Azerbaijani musicians have a very well-established reputation in the international musical community, and one of them will be performing after my speech. And just to finish off the musical section, this is Vagif Mustafazadeh. Another gem in the music world is Azerbaijani jazz, so which covers a broad range of styles and often features a blend with traditional Azerbaijani music. And it's very, very popular. It's very widespread in Azerbaijan. We love our jazz musicians. We cherish them. We follow them. This is the founding father, Fagif Mustafazadeh. That's him with his daughter Aziza Mustafazadeh, who's also a jazz singer and performer. She lives in Germany at the moment, and that's him again. If you're into jazz somehow, you would love him. We grew up obviously with this music. We have them as a background, even when I work or when I jog or whatever. So just to show you that it's not only music, but we also like dancing. And dancing, it's a huge part of the Azerbaijani culture, and we showed you already, some of the national costumes. So it's gracious. It's gracious, and we've got, let's say, two. Let me see if I can see. Yes, that's another type of women dancing. I think it's Asma Kasma. It's called. It's carried by female wedding guests, and they accompany the newly bride to her marital chambers. That's called Choban Raksid. It's the movements of which are meant to symbolize the work of shepherds in the countryside, and it's yes, it's a kind of a high beat there, and it's tough to perform. That's Our Ladies for you. Gracious. That's our Hot Man, Azerbaijani Man. That's another performance. I mean, dance performances are spectacular. They're really, really colorful. They're vivid. And the music is fantastic as well. And now, Gela, is that okay if I carry on?
Yes, it's absolutely fine. It is fascinating, so
Oh,
interesting.
oh,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. So, obviously, it's a if you understand that it's a very tough job to cover culture in 15 minutes because there is so much going on in the cultural aspects. But I'm going to probably leave the graphic arts for now because applied arts in Azerbaijan are a very, very strong historically. So you're probably familiar with Turkish and Iranian, Persian carpentry. So Azerbaijan is known in the world for also its carpet weaving traditions and carpets representing carpet making schools from different regions. And we've got 4 main carpet schools. Again, is Karabakh, the second is Gubashirvan, the third is Baku, and the 4th one is Ganja, Kazakh. So, and they kept in the famous museums of the world, and I think V&A has one of them. This is the carpet museum in Baku. By the way, it's really beautiful. You'll see later on. That's also a carpet museum in Baku. It's a beautiful display of all antique carpets, traditional of all schools. That's Karabakh, a carpet. That's the one. That's also Karabakh carpet. That's, I think, goodness me, I think it's Gubashirvan. I really hope not carpet specialist to listen to me. That's Ganja, Kazakh, I think, yes. And that's Ganja, sorry, that's Ganja, yes, the yellow one. And I want to also, yes, and Azerbaijani carpet, obviously, they're proclaimed in like a masterpiece of intangible heritage for UNESCO, but pretty much lots of things are, inscribed in UNESCO, lots of things from Azerbaijan. If you again come back to this argument that I had about the creativity, so you've got this school of carpets, in Turkey, now brotherly Turkey, and then also in Iran. But I'm just gonna boast very boldly. That's the carpet museum, the building in Baku, beautiful building, modern building. So I'm gonna boast now with our creativity a bit more because it's another great example of how you can fuse and merge something old and new in a way that it is stunning. So it's sort of a revolution in a way in a traditional art craftsmanship, and the name of the artist who came up with this new vision is Faik Ahmed. He's international recognized artist. He's got a track of solo exhibitions in top art galleries and museums in the world. He was nominated for a very fancy award here in Victoria Albert Museum. I don't remember the name, but it was something fancy. Faik's visual language is certainly one of a kind, if you can see. So by means that he turns traditional decorative craft into new concepts and into new contemporary sculpture work of art. He breaks, that's another one. It's all carpets, by the way. So he breaks the usual codes of carpet weaving and he deconstructs tradition and stereotypes. And I personally think that not always this fusion of old and new work, but in this instance, I think it's created, it's stunning, in fact, and very unique in my view. And his name for sure entered art history for such a successful sort of dialogue of ancient traditional crafts and hyper contemporary looks, like digitally distorted images in a form of pixelation, 3D shapes, and melting paints, and so on. That's another one for you. That's another one. That's his sculpture work again with this That's another one. Sorry, it came out very small. And that's himself, the master, with his masterpiece, Faik Ahmed. And further on, I'd like to talk about another type of applied art that perhaps is just very close to me, because I also enjoy glass painting, as Galia mentioned on the side. So anything to do with glass, I jump on it. So I really like stained glass in churches in UK, obviously in France, you know, in Italy. So that is very close to me. So we have our own type of stained glass handicraft, and it's called shebeke. Shebeke it's called. So the unique side of it is that the window sashes and lattices were made from standard wooden component with wooden pins and not a single nail. That's very important. Not a single nail. And these wooden frames slot into each other, and then you set the glass inside. But if you miscalculate by just 1 millimeter, it won't fit. So as you can imagine, the precision in this work is just paramount, just by 1 millimeter. The Shaki region, it's in the north of Azerbaijan, is famous for this impressive shebeke. And Shaki lies on the ancient Silk Route, by the way. And it was in the program of Joanna Lumley, right? I think she had a series, I think, on the Silk Road and countries, and Azerbaijan was one of them. And then she actually visited Shaki. I was very pleased that she visited Shaki, not only Baku, as usual. Generally, you know, they just do capital touring, but. And then she also showed this stained glass art, and I enjoyed her Sweets and Caravan. So I'll show you later. Just a second. I'll just... So now, yes. So this stained glass artwork can be admired in the city's ancient 18th century Khan Palace. So these pictures are taken from the palace. I'm showing you now. You're going to see the outside later on. That's inside. There you see the beauty of the work of this shebeke. And as you can see from the pictures, the local rulers, they clearly had an eye for detail. So the palace is laden with the intricate details, both inside and out. And that's mural paintings as well. Let me see. That's a brighter picture here that you can see. That's also, it's the same palace, Shaki Khan Palace. And that's the outside. So you can see the outside of the palace. And it's the palace rests in the shade of 500-year-old plane trees, and it's lavishly decorated, as you can see, and it's, I would say, sort of most exquisite architectural monument of the Khanate period. Khanate, it means political entity at the 18th century. And it was used as a summer residence of Shaki Khan in the cool foothills of the Caucasus Mountains. Well, Shaki, as I told you, has a long history as a former hub of the silk trade, and it's just a very beautiful historic town. That's, by the way, the tree. They are 500-year-old. It's enormous. There's two of them. That's Caravanserai. So the town is it's just beautiful. A historic town with intricate brickwork, with mosque, hammams, cobble streets, and an authentic very well preserved caravanserai. I stayed there myself a few times. I generally go there to the north of the country myself pretty much every summer. It's just related to my family. So and we stop by in caravanserai. Kids love it. It's a lot of fun with these high steps and so on, and the whole settings as well. It's very authentic. So that's another picture for you of caravanserai. So the rooms are just alongside that wall. And that's another inside from the caravanserai. And that's just, I thought to give you a feel of the town. So it's pretty much in the mountains, set in the mountains like that. Sheki. Yeah. And now, Leila, are we?
I think, yeah, we have probably to wrap up. And thank you very much. It was very, very interesting, beautiful photos, and I didn't know some things myself. And I think glaziers know now where to go. Several of our members are also members of the glaziers, and they love stained glass. I think Sheki could be one of the destinations for them.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting.